don't know how many of you are going to join, but this is a new endeavor here. Just let me know if you can hear me. If you can't hear me, you're going to hear all of the background noise because I forgot my headphones. So you get to experience Rome as walking on the streets. So, and even the disappointments, I was supposed to go to a conference this evening at Chiesa Nuova, which is where we're starting. And the conference was on Caravaggio. But there was nowhere to sit. So I couldn't, it's hard enough for me to understand the Italian. So if I wasn't going to hear the Italian or the whole phrases, I imagined I shouldn't stay. So I've been prepping this live for you, and I'm sitting here. Don't worry, you're going to see Rome. You're not going to see me, but I wanted to try something new. You'll see my face for the first or second time on Crux Stationalis. And this is going to hopefully be a weekly endeavor where we go through the streets of Rome, different places, let you just experience it as it is. And it's going to be hopefully interactive. I saw your comments coming in that you can hear me. Hello to those of you who have joined. And for those of you who aren't able to watch now, it will be posted on the channel, so there's no problem there. But we are starting here at Chiesa Nuova, and we're going to walk. So let me turn around the camera. We're going to walk. Let me adjust. Excuse the shaking of the screen. Here we're at Chiesa Nuova, new church, or Santa Maria in Vallicella, which was built by St. Philip Neri. It's his church. He's buried inside. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, Facebook, everything, you know that I am very close to St. Philip Neri. I'm close to him, especially as a member of the Venerable Archconfraternity of the Most Holy Trinity and the Pilgrims and Convalescents. It's a very long name. Even we forget it sometimes. We always forget to say venerable. But this church, as you can see, is built in honor of the Blessed Virgin and Saint Gregory the Great. And you have a beautiful passage, Tota pulchra es amica mea, et macula non est in te. Entirely beautiful are you, my friend, and there is no stain within you. So we're going to be moving on to, as you can see, we're on a busy street here. This is Vittorio Emanuele II, Corso Vittorio Emanuele, which is a very busy street, which the 64 train, that's the 64 right there. I'm always on that bus, famous for pickpocketing, and I'm not famous for pickpocketing. The 64 line is famous for pickpocketing. And the 40, they run on this. The 40 takes you to basically right in front of St. Peter's. The 64 also takes you to St. Peter's, but we are not going to walk on the main street. We are going to walk on the side streets, which are a bit quieter. There's a pharmacy here. That's what they look like with these big flashing lights. So this, obviously, some of these are going to be more prepared than others. I'll have greater information. You can already tell just going onto a side street, it's a bit quieter. But this is Via della Chiesa Nuova. Some of you might also know that I used to live just in this neighborhood. Hold on, there's a really cool car coming. These are the cars which they've actually been growing. I think they're electric. They've been growing in popularity in the city. They look funny. Beautiful image of Our Lady, which is usually overlooked. Arco della Chiesa Nuova. As you can see, so we're walking along the side of Chiesa Nuova, and I'm taking you to Via del Governo Vecchio. This restaurant has reopened. It was closed. As happened in this area, a lot of restaurants were closed. The difficulty of the regulations that were had in Italy the last 2 years, almost 3 years, since March of 2020. So we're walking on Via della Chiesa Nuova. This used to be the entrance to my house, here on the left. And then here you find a beautiful image of St. Philip Neri with the Blessed Mother. And then this street is Via del Governo Vecchio, and it takes you, if you go this way, it takes you to Piazza Navona. But we are going to go the other way towards St. Peter's. You can, if you see something interesting, you can comment about it. You can tell me where you're watching from. And I hope in the future when we have, just with regular viewers, I hope, you'll be able to make requests of the places you want to see in Rome. I hope you'll see places that are new or places that are familiar for those of you who have been to Rome. So this actually used to be my room, right there. That was my bathroom, that was my room. It just got personal. But we're walking still on Governo Vecchio. This is a nice place for tea and wine. Caffè Novecento. Watching from home. This is my trick. You always follow the cars when you're trying to get through crowd. I mean, there wasn't a big crowd, but when the streets are busy and you know where you're going, you always go and walk behind the cars. Another beautiful shrine to Our Lady. I've featured this on Instagram before. Let's hope I don't get hit by a car. And it's always beautiful. This is what everyone loves when they come to Rome. They just walk and then you see one image of Our Lady and then you see another image of Our Lady. There was another page on Instagram that has featured a lot of these, I need to find the content, a lot of these images of Our Lady. It'd be interesting to know how many there are in the city. I'm sure there is a record in the city of them. This is a street. There's some shops on this street which have antiques. But it's a tricky business in Rome. The antiques in Rome are very overpriced. So you get lucky maybe sometimes, but other times not. And this isn't a very long walk. Obviously, it takes a bit longer when I'm on camera. Hello, Agnese from Emporio. I'm walking in the wrong direction. I should be walking towards Agnese in Emporio. Oh, there's a restaurant I just passed that I have never tried. I don't know why. But it looks like just a typical trattoria, and my friends and I have never tried it. There's one around the corner here. We're not so far from the bridge. So this walk, as I was saying before Agnese surprised me with her viewership. Agnese, as you might know, for those of you who are very devoted to the Roman station churches, Agnese is the original pilgrim. She is the one who introduced the Roman station churches to me years ago. She's been a friend of mine for over a decade. I think we counted 12 years the last time I saw her. And she introduced it to me years ago, and I've been following it, and she's the reason why I'm so interested in it, which I'm very happy. It's part of her spiritual life at Rome, because it is, as I've tried to instill so much on YouTube and on Instagram, it is just a very Roman, diocesan, local church reality. It's part of the spiritual life here to go, and because of that, it's part of the spiritual life of the whole church, which is why you even see it in old missals underneath the title for the day. You see churches where there's been station churches assigned. And that's why I have this channel for you guys. For those of you who are interested, first, it's a very interesting building. I'm sure I could tell you more about it. but it has very interesting portals there, which I'll show you another time. But this is where all the priests and bishops and cardinals get their hair cut. Sometimes it's very cheap. It's like 10 euro, unless it's probably gone up in price. And then this place is good for salami and cheese, and I think they don't do a spritz anymore, but they have wine and beer, which is good. But it's a place where it's an easy meeting place, because right around the corner up here, on the way to Castel Sant'Angelo, you have the Church of Santi Celso Giuliano, which I'm very happy to show you because the facade was just renovated, cleaned. There's two realities in Rome with these church facades. Some are travertine, which means more money was had in the ability, usually either by the significance of the church, or just wealthy families with this church or that church, and when they were built, travertine facades were able to be put on. So we're going to see that in a bit. But here is the Arco dei Banchi, which you see on starry blue sky. Let me back up and we'll walk through it again with you. So you see this often, photos and videos of this on social media, so now you get to see it on my channel. But as I was saying, this facade is travertine, so to clean it now, it's very easy, because you just have to clean it. But, for example, the church that you know I go to often, Santissima Trinità dei Pellegrini, which is where St. Philip founded the church, and it's St. Philip Neri, and it's where the traditional mass is said. That church is in desperate repair of the facade. However, it's not a fully travertine facade, so it's not a matter of just cleaning it like this one. This only took maybe 3-4 months, where there was all this scaffolding, maybe a bit more, but it's amazing the change. It's a lot of noises you hear on the streets of Rome. Let me see if you can see any of the stars. So for Trinità, for that to be cleaned, first it has to be stripped of yes, Johnny, you'll see it the next time you come to Rome. Johnny Egan is a regular traveler to Rome. We're always happy when he comes because he's always so helpful in the parish life and active. He's also a member he's a confratello of mine in the Archconfraternity. So, but it is going to be a project at Trinità to renew the facade. But it has to be cleaned because it was painted with this orange to match the sort of Savoy colors which all of Rome is painted in. And that has to be stripped. And then the travertine, which only goes up about 16 feet, that will be cleaned. And then the rest of the facade was actually historically a fake travertine. So to do that, it's going to be, it's a lot of work. It's not just, like I said, cleaning the facade. Ciao, confratello. Yeah, the Savoy colors are, so the reason why you have all of that, it was during, I don't know, John, I don't know enough reason, but that's why Rome is those colors, the orange. That's why you see all those facades. It was a choice of the Savoys. But you might know more, but does that make sense? But here we are, we're crossing Ponte degli Angeli. So this is the same street that we were looking at in front of, it's not, Lungotevere. The street we were just on, in front of Chiesa Nuova, comes up and connects by the river to the Lungotevere. And so now we're just on the Lungotevere, the street that goes along the Tiber, the Tevere. Sometimes this can be during the day a very busy spot. A lot of tourists cross here, obviously. And this is an original bridge for pilgrims to cross from the center to visit the tomb of Saint Peter. So that's what we're doing. You've seen this on the YouTube videos already when we've traveled to St. Peter's. And here stands St. Peter here on the right and St. Paul on the left. And then, beautiful thing, I don't know what's happening, but the lights are not on the angels. But the angels here are holding instruments of the Passion. So usually they're better lit, but there's something wrong with the lights. Maybe, I don't know why. Yes, I didn't want to say too much. Well, I didn't really know what to say, Agnese, but Trinità dei Pellegrini will have its facade restored very soon. And now my brother has just joined. Hopefully his homeschooled kids are watching too. It's always nice to teach kids and show kids of Rome. So we have the instruments of the Passion are held by these angels. And then you have scripture underneath relating to these instruments of the Passion. There was a year based during the 2020, 2021, I would walk across this every morning in about 5:55 in the morning to go serve Mass very early in the morning. And that's beautiful because you're usually the only one out at that hour. Holding the veil. Some of them don't have the scripture underneath. The crown of thorns, in aurumna mea dum configitur spina. Agnese should actually be on this tour with me. I don't know what she's doing. I know what she's doing. But Caterina, Johnny, Agnese, the next time we're all in Rome, we can go live and show more people's experiences of what it's like to walk through the streets of Rome. The Tiber has been high. Let's go look at the Tiber. The other day, I took a picture, and the Tiber was maybe 4 feet higher than this. It was all the pavements down below were... Thank you. I'm glad your monk friend's enjoying it. So the Tiber was... Don't worry. Don't worry. Look. I won't drop my phone. I'm just leaning on the ledge. So the Tiber was very high. There's been rains, and then also there's a I don't know how they do it. A friend of mine rows, and he rows actually down here on the river, and basically you can row to this bridge. Beyond this bridge, as a single rower, it's a bit too difficult to row, but you can row basically from maybe a mile and a half up the river, which is almost 2 kilometers up the river, and you can row down to here, which is very beautiful, obviously, to row and see the dome of St. Peter's. But, which gets a bad turnaround, Jacob. You can't really see the dome at the moment. But the moon, there's a new moon from the new year, the lunar new year. Hopefully people don't... No. Anyways, but there's a trick that the city does in lowering and raising the water level, but obviously on days like this and always in the winter you get flooding like this, which is also why these battlements had to be built, which they're not pretty. They're copied after Paris, built in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. I'm not too sure. But that's because Rome, probably even later, Agnese, you might know this, but Rome just was flooding. So it used to be, this bridge is the height that it was. However, obviously it would go down on the sides of the bridge much lower. So, but since the fact that this has been built up, the streets have been built up along the river, that means the bridge doesn't have to extend as much. I mean, we're very spoiled in how we live in Rome now compared to how it used to be. All the flooding. Okay, so some of them have lights on, but some don't. But yes, it's very beautiful at this time of day in the evening to take a walk in this area. Sometimes you have to go out of your way to just plan these sorts of evening strolls. What is he holding? He's holding the inscription, which with our Lord's condemnation of Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judeorum, which we've seen 1870s. Okay, thank you. So the battlements were built in the 1870s. Hello, Mike. I'm glad you're taking a break from work to watch. Wow, it's really nice to actually have the interaction with you guys in the comments. It's better than just recording my script on my phone. Here's the lance. So let me say one thing. The inscription that this angel is holding, the INRI, which you see above crucifixes, that is here in Rome. It's at the Church of Santa Croce in Gerusalemme. I can link it in the video once I publish, and in the description of the video, I can link that as well. The lance. What do I have to say about the lance? The lance we see during Lent, and I always mess up. There's 2 Saturdays in Lent. Hi, Jacob. My monk friend would live for you to like for you to show us the Vulnerasti Cormeum.
Singing thing or the music place.
The lance, Agnese, you have to help me. The lance is shown on which Saturday in Lent? So at St. Peter's, one's after Mass and one's after Vespers, we get to see the veil of our Lord, and we get from Veronica's veil, and we get to see a part of the lance, and we're blessed with these relics, and that happens on the 2 Saturdays, which are assigned to St. Peter's for the Roman station churches. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But I can't remember which one's first. I think we see the lance first, and then we see the veil, if I'm correct. Which, obviously, you'll see that on the YouTube channel this coming Lent. And so now we're walking to St. Peter's. Usually during the day, sometimes in the early evening, you hear musicians here. This is a park which you can take a lot of dogs to. You see dogs playing in the early mornings, or the mid mornings. And I was saying the other day, I went live for a short time, and it was a bit impromptu, and no one knew I was going live, so I spoke to just a few people. But Via della Conciliazione, oh lovely, someone from Vegas is watching. But Via della Conciliazione, which is this street right here, is not the original plan for this neighborhood. It's been around for less than 100 years, this straight road leading to St. Peter's. Obviously, it's very impressive. I mean, that's why I'm showing it you right now. This walking up to St. Peter's, the first Saturday of Lent is the Spear of St. Longinus. And then the Saturday before Passiontide is the exposition of the Veil of Veronica, which if some of you have been around here for a while at the channel, you've seen that what happens is we process through the Basilica, singing the Litany of the Saints. Historically, they would have processed even out into the square. Sorry, I'm getting messages also from Facebook Messenger. The people who work for my dad are on a little break watching the video, which is great. What did I want to say? So that is exposed. We process through the Basilica, and historically there's an old nun who this last Lent was telling me and my friend Agnese, because obviously we go to these masses together, which are organized by the Diocese of Rome, and we partake in the processions, and the relics are shown, and it's very beautiful. And this old nun last year said, "Oh, when we were years ago, we used to process out into the square. We don't do that anymore. It would be nice to sort of process out into the square of St. Peter's, But instead, we just process inside the basilica, which is difficult enough because when there's tourists, and sometimes even last year, I try to be very discreet when I'm filming and everything, taking photos and video. And there was one woman who was not so discreet, was not really there to partake in the procession. She just wanted video of everything. That was a difficult thing because she kept getting in the way of the guards, and then it was just going to ruin the experience for everyone. So that can happen. But instead, I got some really cool shots, which I'll also link to those videos. But it is quite impressive, even though this is not the original plan for this neighborhood, to just approach slowly St. Peter's. But historically, the intention of St. Peter's Basilica, obviously preeminent in the devotion of within the Diocese of Rome, being the burial place of St. Peter, first Pope, but in a spot which is not really part of the city. He was martyred over here in the circus, which was over here, and was not buried too far from it. And then eventually the devotion grew, or rather the ability to show the devotion grew, and a tropaeum was built above his burial place, which is what gives us the historical, archaeological evidence that truly his burial place is underneath the dome. But it was a hillside, and he was just buried in the hillside. And it wasn't really part of the, historically in Rome, bodies weren't built inside the city. So Rome was kind of across the river before we crossed the Bridge of the Angels, and this was kind of out of the way. But as you know, when people come to Rome, this is kind of the place that people like to be, especially as pilgrims and tourists. And so that's why I'm taking you there. But originally, we wouldn't be walking down a street this straight to get to St. Peter's. We'd be walking through side streets, turning. You might see a glimpse of the dome here and there, but the intention, Michelangelo's intention, was that you would just stumble upon this massive dome in your neighborhood. And that happens. I'll do this on another video. It happens if you're on a side street over here, which is Santo Spirito. You can just be walking and you see the dome, but as you come out of the buildings right next to the colonnade, it just sort of appears in your face. And that was the intention. And even so, we'll see as we get closer to the colonnade, the original plan of the colonnade was to be a full circle with just two openings. But we would not have seen, Agnese is saying she taught me well. Yes, there's so much more to learn. Actually, I was sitting at this conference and I couldn't hear anything, this conference on Caravaggio. And I've been in Rome for 7 years, and there's so much to learn. There's always so much to learn, which is why that's part of the motive of this channel, is I want to share with you, and also it forces me to sort of stay on top of things. Kind of out of breath. I'm talking very energetically. So yeah, we would just come. Originally, there would have been an additional colonnade sort of blocking the facade, which is, again, all these things sort of work out in the end. It's beautiful to walk down, especially in the morning. The sunrise in the morning as you're walking to Mass at St. Peter's. You have sometimes the pinks and the golds, and of course in the golden hour and the blue hour, whichever one comes first, in the evening. It just changes the facade, which is very beautiful. That's the beauty of this travertine. The beauty of Rome is it's almost different every day, depending on the weather. Except for in the wintertime, it's pretty much. Well, they probably know I'm not talking to myself, Justin. But no, I know. I'm actually. I'm actually not. I didn't even think about that until you said. Well, I did a little bit. I do get a bit embarrassed talking at a screen, going live. But I mean, you do see it every so often, and so long as you're not saying ridiculous things, I don't know. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I get to see this. Especially now, just for those of you, so I've moved. I used to live at Chiesa Nuova, which is where we started the video. And so for me to get home to where I live, I take a train, which is just over there. Well, sort of just over there. It's about a 10-minute walk up that way. And so now I get to actually see St. Peter's even more than when I was living in the center of Rome, because I have to pass it every day. Coming in and out of the city. So that's actually, I actually am realizing that and appreciating that more. It's obviously difficult to commute instead of just being able to be a 5-minute walk to Sunday Mass and daily Mass. Instead, you get to see more and experience more of the city. I think I'll experience more of the city coming in and out because I won't be so localized and centered just in a particular neighborhood in Rome. So that's kind of exciting. So you see the colonnade. The colonnade, there was supposed to be an additional third part, which would have closed all of this here. But instead we get to just kind of take in, I don't know how long it took us to walk, but take in the dome. We'll walk into the square, we'll walk by the fountain, and then that might be it for this video. But I'm really happy to do this. It'll be a bit different. Obviously, maybe you'll see St. Peter's more often than other places, but I want to take you to other places as well, live. And then, of course, these videos will be uploaded onto the channel as well. Well, so as some of you might know the news, I don't remember when it happened. If it was springtime 2021, when Pope Francis changed it to where all private masses were no longer allowed to be said up in the basilica. So usually you'd be able to walk into the basilica. The doors open at 6:45. Well, the security opens at 6:45. So when you're coming to Mass in the morning at, or when we were able to come, you could enter the security that's here, which is the security you enter during the day to enter the basilica as well. And we'd enter in at 6:45 in the security. Usually you'd see the similar people from the neighborhood going to Mass here. But then you'd also see pilgrim groups. And the priests would go into the sacristy, they'd vest. There'd be, 40 to 50 priests, regular priests who work inside the Vatican, who also would say their masses in St. Peter's every morning. So not all the altars, but all the altars that you were able to see would be full of a priest saying Mass. Sometimes a regular priest in Italian, it'd just be an Italian priest who works in the Vatican saying Mass. Other times you'd see the Latin Mass. And then other times you'd see pilgrim groups. You'd see even Eastern rites celebrating at altars. And then there'd be special Masses for the Feast of St. Gregory the Great and like that. And so basically you'd walk in the morning for the first 2 hours, or at least until 8:30, something like that, and everyone was praying and they'd be at Mass. And you could go to 3-4 Masses in the morning if you wanted. So that changed in 2021, I believe, in the spring of 2021. And no longer were priests allowed to celebrate Masses on the side altars, called March 12th, 2021. Thank you, Johnny. You hear the bells. No longer were they able to celebrate on the side altars. Instead, there were certain scheduled masses at the altar of the chair and maybe at the altar of Saint Joseph, which were meant for priests who wanted to come and be a pilgrim in St. Peter's, in pilgrim groups. It's meant for them to join those masses, for priests to come celebrate at those masses. This wasn't well received, and people really didn't know what to do. I had friends who went into the sacristy the next day after, on March 12th, I think it was been published really early. It was either put on the sacristy door in the early wee hours of the morning, but they came into the sacristy not knowing what they were supposed to do, and even the sacristan didn't know what to do. Why change something that was kind of an unbroken system? And especially, you hear from so many people, when they say, "Oh, I was able to attend Mass with my visiting priests in Rome at St. Peter's Basilica." It's a huge thing to people's pilgrim visits to the Eternal City, to the tomb of St. Peter. And sometimes people were able to celebrate at the Clementine Chapel. So actually, since then, I have been only to a few Masses in the morning here at St. Peter's. I would come once or twice a week to a Mass here in the morning. And I knew where the traditional Masses were. I was able to go to those. So actually, I don't know what was actually happening at the moment, but from the starting of this period 2 years ago, what was happening was that they decided that within the Clementine Chapel, and sometimes it's not the Clementine Chapel, sometimes it's one of the grotto chapels, there were 4 slots for Mass to be celebrated: 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30. And those Masses were only allowed to be traditional Masses at one of those 4 times in the morning underneath in the grottos. And very difficult. There was once I tried to go, and I got down, but I know there was another person in that same week who tried to go, and he was unable to get down because he didn't know the name of the priest. And so he knew that there was a Mass going down, but he didn't know it was this Monsignor. It was even a papal MC. He didn't know the name. So the guard wouldn't let him down to go attend this Mass. But this person wanted to specifically attend the traditional Mass. And the guard said, well, it's not allowed. It's like, okay, well, it's the same thing that happens often. Usually the guards here, there's so many different types of guards that the communication just isn't that great. So you never know what answer you're going to get. It depends on the guard, and you kind of have to keep your eyes on that guard to make sure that you get what you already kind of bargained for. So in my understanding, from that point, there were the opportunity for 4 traditional Masses to be celebrated inside the Basilica every day. And other than that, there were public Masses where priests who wanted to celebrate the Novus Ordo were able to con-celebrate at those Masses in Italian. So it made no sense for a lot of pilgrim priests who don't speak Italian, and doesn't really make any sense for the unity of the Church or the unity of the rite for a priest to be con-celebrating in a language which is not his own, whether it be Latin or his vernacular language. And so another kind of comical, sad, anecdotal story. The first Sunday, so I don't know what day of the week March 12th, 2021 was, March 13th, 2021, but the Sunday following that, there was meant to be a 9 a.m. Mass at the altar of the chair, and it was a Sunday, meant to be a public Mass. No priest showed up to celebrate it. A woman from the neighborhood wanted to go. She showed up for this 9 o'clock Mass, and there was no one on the schedule because it just was not it wasn't done in this way before. So of course no one knew and no one took responsibility, but no one knew what they were supposed to be doing. So long story short, sort of, as you know, I tend to give long-winded stories. My understanding is the traditional Mass is said here at least Monday through Saturday, and there's a few options from the 7 o'clock hour, but you kind of have to, the difficulty is you have to rush into the Basilica and you have to go to the entrance of the grottos and you have to say, it's this Monsignor Agostini who celebrates it. And if he's not there, if it's someone else, well, maybe they'll let you in, maybe they won't. I don't know. I mean, I can try it this week and see and let you know. But I haven't heard anything other than that sort of explanation. I do know another thing is that, oh, beautiful birds. Hopefully I don't get anything dropped on me. I do know another thing is the Polish in Rome and others who have devotion to St. John Paul II and his altar. There's Mass in the morning at that altar, which goes against the sort of ruling from March of 2021 that Mass not be celebrated on these side altars. But it just started happening. I even served a Mass for Cardinal Pell. Cardinal Pell was asked to celebrate one of those Masses at the altars. On the first Saturday of the month, there's a Mass in English at the altar of St. John Paul II, usually kind of the word of mouth through the universities and such as the Anglophones in Rome. And Cardinal Pell was asked to celebrate that, and I went to serve for him. And for those of you who know, Cardinal Pell just recently died, and I was also able to read the first reading at his funeral Mass, which was very humbling and a very, very beautiful thing, having worked in his house for some time. And so I served that Mass, and yeah, it was basically people saying, sorry, this is our devotion. We're not going to stop these Masses, which are so well attended at the tomb of St. John Paul II. And so that continued. And I don't know if there's been any other quote unquote resistance, but I'll have to go to St. Peter's in the morning sometime this week and inform you about that. So here we are, St. Peter's. Carlo Maderno designed the facade, which sort of ruins the effect of the dome. Originally, St. Peter's Basilica, I'm just going to say a few things and then I'll get off. It's been 42 minutes. Originally, St. Peter's was meant to be in the form of a Greek cross. So a cross where all the sides are of equal length. Instead, St. Peter's was lengthened, so the facade comes more forward than it was meant to come. And then this massive facade was designed by Carlo Maderno, and it sort of obstructs the view of the dome once you get closer. But that's okay, because then we see Christ and the saints atop. And then, as you know, in the center, that's where we hear the great news of a new pope. That's where we hear the Urbi et Orbi from the Pope on Easter and Christmas. Right in the center, the loggia in the center. And underneath you have Christ giving the keys to Peter. I think that's all I have to show you tonight. And then I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a nice comment if you enjoyed it. Share it with people who don't know about the channel. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss these live videos and all my other videos. Okay, God bless you, and we'll say a Hail Mary before we leave. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.